What's up guys, it's Dwayne, back again for another video, back again for the reaction, and today is a great day because it's a Sweden day. I didn't even let that breathe that time. 5 things that are shockingly cheap. Sorry, I'm in a weird mood. 5 things that are shockingly cheap in Sweden. Without further ado, let's get into this reaction.
Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I recently posted a video on my channel a few weeks ago talking about things that were very, very expensive in Sweden. Now, Sweden's a very expensive country, and I say across the board, a lot of things are more expensive in Sweden than in the US. And I made a video talking about...
I wonder what the difference between Sweden and the UK is in terms of prices.
5 things that I thought were shockingly or like extremely expensive when comparing the two side by side. It was very, very interesting to see the feedback from you guys in that video. One of the things I talked about was the meat. For example, comparing the cost of meat in America versus Sweden. And a lot of the responses were talking about how in Sweden people treat the animals so much better and that the meat quality is so much higher in Sweden. And I'm definitely not an expert on this issue, but I was just reading the statistics from comparing the two countries side by side. And in some cases, like for chicken breast.
Yeah, I know America, they don't treat meat well. Like the way that their slaughterhouses, and I just think ethics in America is not great.
The cost would be 3 to 4 times what we were actually paying for it in the US. And that to me is shocking, regardless of the animal treatment and all these things, that it could be such a huge difference. But again, I am no expert on the meat industry in Sweden versus America, and it's interesting to see your comments down below. Another comment that kept coming up very, very frequently in that video was, could I make a video about 5 things that were surprisingly cheap in Sweden? And this video I think was much more difficult to make because in general, like I said, Sweden's a very expensive country, but there are some things that are surprisingly cheap here. And I'm going to discuss the 5 things that really stood out to me and things that really were surprisingly cheap to me when I moved to Sweden. Now, the first thing that stood out to me as being cheap in Sweden when I first moved here around 4 years ago was the cell phone plans. Now, at that time in America, cell phones for an individual, if you wanted data and everything, it would be, you know, between $30 and $50, I'm pretty sure. And in Sweden, there were
$30 and $50. That's expensive.
There was a lot of these low budget service providers where you could actually get a phone plan for like the first few months for only 50 crowns. So like at that time, you know, $5, $6 a month. And then maybe that would go up to like $10, $15 a month. Now with that being...
That's pretty cheap. That's pretty low. But I think we sit in the UK somewhere in the middle. We can get some cheap data plans, but I think the lowest is probably like £10. So yeah.
Said, I'm not sure if there's still a huge difference in the cell phone prices between the two countries, but I have to say, from being in Sweden and using Swedish cell phone providers here in Sweden, the cell phone service here is absolutely excellent. I don't know too many cities in the world where you can be down on the subway and have flawless, perfect subway service. I've ridden the subway in New York, my cell phone service would cut out. In LA, same thing. I've heard London is the exact same way. So it's something that I just have strange.
I can't lie, in London it just cuts out. Like, it's getting better. There's some underground stations where the cell phone service is okay, but most stations you don't get any service at all. So
strangely taken for granted living in Stockholm that pretty much wherever I go in and around Stockholm, I've never had any sort of problem with service. Even if I go out on like a boat trip or like out to the islands, it's really, really good here. Now these next 2 are sort of cheap shots, but I feel like this video wouldn't be complete unless I mention them. And number 2 is the healthcare. Now we all know that Swedish people pay extremely high taxes, but with those high taxes, you get a lot of benefits being a part of Swedish society, and healthcare is one of those things. Normally, if I have to visit the doctor here in Sweden, I'll pay between 100 and 200 crowns for the copay, but then pretty much everything else is covered by the Swedish government healthcare. Same thing if you have to fill out prescriptions at a pharmacy or something, you might have to pay a little bit, but then once you get to a certain point, or if you've had a certain number of doctor's visits, you'll actually be able to go for free within a certain period of time. Now, even though this isn't technically free because of the high taxes, there is something really nice just knowing that if anything happens, you'll be taken care of here in Sweden. In America, a lot of people get their health care covered actually by their employer. Like I know my parents are both teachers and they get healthcare covered through their job, through their work. But I also know some people in America that are self-employed and that have to pay like thousands of dollars every single month to cover the cost of their health insurance, which is absolutely insane when you add that up. Now, as I was alluding to earlier, the third thing falls into this exact same category as something that is sort of funded by the taxpayers, and that is the cost of college. If you are a European citizen, you can get free college in Sweden. Now, as an American,
that's really good. That's something that we don't have in the UK. It's free tuition. I have so much debt from university. I should have gone to university. I should have gone to university in Sweden.
Definitely did not come out ahead here. College in America is extremely expensive, and basically if you looked at the cost of tuition, fees, the cost of living on campus and all these things, it was between $25,000 and $30,000 every single year for me to go to college. Now I did a special...
It wasn't quite that expensive. For me, it was like maybe like 15,000 a year. Yeah, about 15,000 a year, something like that.
The program where I could go through college really, really fast, and I actually got my bachelor's degree in only 2 years. But for somebody to go to college for 4 years in America, those things really, really start to add up. The whole ironic thing about the situation is my family paid thousands of dollars for my college education to America, and then I moved to Sweden where I am not personally benefiting from the free college, and I'm still paying super high taxes. I think it's better just to not think about that. The fourth thing that is surprisingly cheap in Sweden is boat trips. Now in Stockholm, there is pretty much water everywhere. And I was very, very surprised because you'd see these boats that are going around Stockholm. And actually, to ride those boats, it's the exact same cost as riding the subways or the buses, because riding those boats is included in your commuter pass. When you scan your commuter card at the subway or whatever, or if you buy a ticket on the app, you can use that to ride the boats here as well. That to me is sort of mind-blowing, that you can basically have people that are commuting to work on a boat every day. And in addition to that, one fun thing that a lot of Swedish people like to do is go on cruises. There's all sorts of cruises that go from Stockholm to different parts of Europe, like to Finland, different ports in Finland, or maybe a little bit further south into like Estonia and some of these other countries. I always thought that would be super fun to do on a cruise, and it is actually surprisingly inexpensive. And the last thing that is definitely cheaper in Sweden,
I might go on a cruise when I come to Sweden,
than it is in America is sports. Growing up as a kid, if you want to play sports in America, it's extremely expensive. When I was a kid, it would cost like $2,000 a year for me to play Premier Soccer. And I can verify today that this is definitely still the case, because I work for a company that works basically with football or soccer, what we call in the US, and our clients in the US that are playing soccer at a high level, these kids, they are paying thousands of dollars a year still in club fees. I think the average cost to play Premier Soccer in California at a Premier club, I think is like $3,000 a year, which is absolutely insane. I'm not 100% sure on exactly how much it costs to play sports here in Sweden, but I just know from my Swedish colleagues' reactions to how much it costs in America, they're always extremely surprised by how expensive it is. So with that being said, guys, those are the 5 things that I thought of that are cheaper in Sweden than in America. I'd love to hear which one of those 5 surprised you the most, so leave a comment down below in the description, or let me know if I missed anything. And with that being said, guys, I will see you in another video.
Interesting. I mean, a lot of those, for me, the free healthcare, I knew about that already. Some of them he cheated, because it's not like shockingly cheap. It's just stuff that's actually free. But yeah, it sounds like the boat trips, that's what's interested me, because when I come to Sweden next year, making a day, I'm definitely coming to Sweden next year. I would love to hop on some of the boats and just go around the city and around Stockholm and go on a cruise. That would be amazing. So much fun. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And when I do it, I'm gonna do a vlog as well. So I'll document my whole journey. Yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, I'll see you later.